I love what I do. I'm happy to play here, and that hunger won't subside. It'll be maintained because I just love playing.
While much of the Boston Red Sox's offseason strategy to this point has revolved around the trade market, recent reporting suggests a meaningful shift is now underway. After weeks of exploratory conversations, contingency planning, and market surveillance, the Red Sox appear to be recentering their focus on free agency, and more specifically, on one familiar name that simply refuses to go away: Alex Bregman. According to ESPN's Buster Olney, speaking on an episode of the podcast First Up with Korolnek and Kaliakovo, the Red Sox have made what was described as an aggressive offer to Bregman. Olney went further, openly speculating that the situation is trending toward a reunion in Boston. That single word, aggressive, has immediately reignited debate across the league. Because in the context of the Red Sox, aggressive does not always mean what fans assume it means. It does not automatically signal a long-term commitment. It does not necessarily imply a dramatic philosophical shift in how the organization allocates payroll. And it certainly does not guarantee that Boston is suddenly willing to outbid the field in years and total dollars. Instead, it suggests something more nuanced and potentially more revealing. It suggests that the Red Sox, faced with a rapidly shrinking list of alternatives, may be recalibrating in real time. To understand how the Red Sox arrived at this point, it's important to step back and look at the broader offseason landscape, one that has been unusually slow, unusually quiet, and unusually resistant to the type of blockbuster position player signings that once defined winter baseball. Since the winter meetings last month, the market for impact hitters has cooled dramatically. Kyle Schwarber and Pete Alonso both came off the board early. Third baseman Kazuma Okamoto officially exited the market when he signed a 4-year deal with the Toronto Blue Jays. Beyond that, movement has been minimal. And now, standing alone at the top of the remaining infield free agent class is Alex Bregman. Not because he's the only name left, but because he is clearly the best overall option. Bregman sits above players like Eugenio Suarez, Ramon Urias, and Yoan Moncada in terms of consistency, postseason pedigree, defensive reliability, and offensive floor. Outside of Bo Bichette, whose market operates in a separate orbit entirely, Bregman represents the most complete infield profile still available. And yet, here he is again. Lingering. This is not new territory for Bregman. Last offseason, he experienced a similar stall, remaining unsigned longer than expected before ultimately agreeing to a 3-year, $120 million deal with Boston. That contract was notable not just for its headline number, but for its structure. Multiple opt-outs, significant deferred money, and a high average annual value that favored the player while limiting long-term risk for the club. At the time, it was widely viewed as a compromise. Bregman wanted long-term security. Boston wanted flexibility. The result was a short-term marriage that worked remarkably well for both sides. On the field, Bregman delivered. He posted a 125 WRC+, accumulated 3.5 WAR, and provided steady leadership in the clubhouse over 118 games. Off the field, the Red Sox retained payroll maneuverability and avoided a lengthy commitment that could age poorly. And now, 1 year later, both sides are back at the table, whether they initially intended to be or not. The key difference this time is leverage. Boston entered the offseason with a clear objective: add an impact bat to the infield without sacrificing long-term flexibility. That objective manifested in multiple directions: trade discussions for Ketel Marte, exploratory talks involving Brendan Donovan, internal evaluations of Isaac Paredes, parallel free agent monitoring of players like Okamoto and Bichette. The Red Sox did not put all their eggs in one basket. They rarely do. But as the weeks passed, the basket started disappearing. Okamoto is gone. Marte appears increasingly unlikely to be moved. Donovan remains expensive in trade capital. Bichette's market is complicated by health questions, positional adjustments, and long-term cost. Suddenly, the universe of realistic alternatives has narrowed. And that changes the calculus. Moto is reporting that Boston made an aggressive offer to Bregman must be understood through this lens. Aggressive does not necessarily mean desperate, but it does suggest urgency. It suggests that the Red Sox are acknowledging what the market is telling them. At the same time, it's important to recognize that Boston's definition of aggressive may not align with traditional expectations. The organization has consistently demonstrated a reluctance to go long-term on free agents, particularly those approaching or already past 30. That philosophy has not changed overnight. In fact, history strongly suggests that any aggressive offer from Boston is more likely to resemble last year's structure than a conventional 6 or 7 year deal. High annual value. Shorter term. Player-friendly opt-outs. Creative financial engineering. That formula allows Boston to remain competitive in the bidding while preserving future flexibility. It also appeals to players like Bregman, who have confidence in their ability to re-enter the market. This approach is not without precedent. Last winter, the Detroit Tigers reportedly made a 6-year, $171.5 million offer to Bregman, a deal that exceeded Boston's winning bid by more than $50 million in total guarantee. It was, by any definition, aggressive. And yet, Bregman declined it. Why? Because years are not the only currency that matters. Bregman has shown a consistent willingness to prioritize situation, competitiveness, and contract structure over sheer length. Boston checks those boxes in ways other suitors do not. That matters even more now, as Bregman's own list of alternatives begins to shrink. Toronto was once viewed as a legitimate landing spot. Mutual interest existed, but with Okamoto now entrenched at third base, that door appears largely closed. Arizona has been loosely connected to Bregman as well, but that scenario becomes increasingly difficult if the Diamondbacks are unwilling or unable to move Ketel Mart's contract. Financial flexibility matters, and Arizona's margins are tight. The Chicago Cubs remain in the picture, at least nominally, but like Boston, they have shown hesitancy toward long-term commitments. Their involvement appears cautious rather than aggressive. The Detroit Tigers, despite their previous offer, have hovered on the periphery. They are not currently viewed as a driving force in the market. Philadelphia represents a theoretical fit, but reporting suggests their financial room may be more limited than expected. While there has been some linkage between the Phillies and Bichette, even that connection appears tentative. Taken together, the picture becomes clearer. As options evaporate on both sides, the gravitational pull between Boston and Bregman grows stronger. This does not guarantee a deal, but it does make one more logical. From Boston's perspective, a Bregman reunion solves multiple problems simultaneously. It stabilizes the infield, it adds a proven right-handed bat, it preserves positional flexibility, it buys time for prospects to develop without forcing them into roles prematurely. From Bregman's perspective, Boston offers familiarity, competitiveness, and a front office willing to be creative. But there is still tension here. Because the Red Sox do not want to repeat past mistakes. They are acutely aware of the long-term payroll implications of their decisions. They are balancing immediate competitiveness against sustainable success. That balancing act is at the heart of this offseason. And it's why this situation remains unresolved. What makes this moment particularly fascinating is how quiet it has been. There have been no public ultimatums, no dramatic leaks, no obvious pressure campaigns, just careful positioning and selective reporting. That suggests ongoing dialogue. And it suggests that both sides are still searching for a structure that aligns risk and reward. Whether they find it remains to be seen. But one thing is becoming increasingly clear. The longer this market drags on, the more sense a reunion makes. Not because it's perfect, but because it's practical. And in modern baseball, practicality often wins. This story is not finished. In fact, it may only be entering its most critical phase. Because once one major domino falls, whether it's Bregman, Bichette, or another unexpected move, the entire landscape can shift overnight. And when that happens, the Red Sox will need to be ready. For now, all signs point toward renewed engagement. Aggressive, yes. Desperate, no. But undeniably intentional. And as this off-season continues to evolve, one question looms larger than all the rest. Are the Red Sox willing to commit, even temporarily, to Alex Bregman once again? That answer may come sooner than anyone expects. And when it does, it will tell us far more about Boston's future than just who plays third base.